In a bustling city where dreams intertwine, one moment can shatter everything. For Maya and James, a simple day out will turn into a fight for dignity. Maya and James walked hand in hand through the lively streets of their city, where the sound of laughter mingled with the aroma of street food and freshly brewed coffee. The sun bathed everything in a warm glow, casting a golden hue over the vibrant storefronts and bustling cafes. As they strolled, they soaked in the energy of the people around them, families enjoying ice cream, friends sharing stories, and street performers captivating onlookers with their talents. For Maya and James, this day was special. They were young, ambitious, and filled with dreams. Maya, a recent college graduate, had just received her degree in social work. She had always wanted to make a difference in the world, to help those who faced hardships and injustices. Today, as they discussed their future, her excitement was palpable. "I can't wait to start my career," she said, her eyes shining. "I want to create programs that uplift the community." James, who worked at a tech startup, shared her enthusiasm. He admired Maya's passion and felt a sense of pride in her aspirations. "And I'm thrilled about my new job," he replied, a smile spreading across his face. "With our combined efforts, we can really make an impact." Their plans for a new apartment danced in their conversation, a cozy space filled with laughter, love, and their shared dreams. They reached their favorite cafe, a charming little spot adorned with colorful flowers and lively outdoor seating. The cafe was a haven for them, a place where they had spent countless hours dreaming, planning, and celebrating milestones. Inside, the walls were decorated with local artwork, and the aroma of baked goods filled the air, making it feel like home. As they settled into their usual corner table, Maya glanced at the menu, her excitement bubbling over. "Let's get the chocolate croissants," she suggested, her mouth watering at the thought. "They're to die for." James nodded eagerly. "You know they're my favorite too." He waved over a waiter and placed their order. The couple leaned back in their chairs, their hearts light, their laughter mingling with the sounds of the cafe. But beneath their joy lay an unspoken awareness of the world around them. As a young black couple, they often faced subtle prejudices, yet they were determined to rise above it. They spoke of their future with hope, their love serving as a shield against the harsh realities of life. As they enjoyed their pastries, they were blissfully unaware that the day was about to take a turn. Just outside the cafe, shadows lurked, and in an instant, their dreams would be challenged. But for now, they were simply Maya and James, a couple in love, lost in their aspirations, ready to take on the world together. The incident. As Maya and James stepped out of the cafe, the warmth of the sun surrounded them, a stark contrast to the chill of the moment that awaited them. They were still basking in their joyful conversation when Officer Mark, a middle-aged white man with a stern expression and a commanding presence, approached. He was patrolling the area, his eyes scanning the street like a hawk. "Hey, you two! What are you doing here?" Officer Mark barked, his tone sharp and accusatory. Maya felt her stomach drop. She glanced at James, who looked equally taken aback by the sudden confrontation. "What do you mean?" James replied, trying to keep his voice calm. "We're just enjoying the day." Officer Mark stepped closer, his eyes narrowing as he sized them up. "You don't belong here. I need to see some ID." Maya's heart raced, but she forced herself to remain composed. "Is there a problem, officer?" "We haven't done anything wrong," she said, her voice steady, although her hands trembled slightly. Officer Mark's posture grew rigid. "You fit the description of some troublemakers we've been dealing with. I need to verify who you are." James felt anger rise within him. "This is harassment. We're just out for a walk. You can't demand our IDs just because we're black." Maya squeezed his hand, trying to calm him down. "Let's just show him our IDs and move on," she whispered. But even as she said it, she knew that compliance could escalate the situation further. "Show me your ID now," Officer Mark shouted, his voice booming, drawing the attention of pedestrians nearby. A few people paused to watch, their expressions a mix of concern and curiosity. Maya took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the situation. "Am I under arrest?" she asked, her tone firm but respectful. She knew her rights, and she refused to let Officer Mark intimidate her. "What's that supposed to mean?" Officer Mark shot back, irritation creeping into his voice. You're making this worse for yourself. James stood tall beside Maya, his expression unwavering. We're not doing anything wrong. We're not obligated to show you anything without just cause, he asserted, his voice steady, but the tension in his body was evident. Officer Mark's face turned red with anger. You will be if you don't cooperate. I'm giving you one last chance. Maya felt the eyes of onlookers on them, and the feeling of being scrutinized made her stomach churn. We're not causing any trouble here, she said, trying to maintain her composure. We just want to enjoy our day. Just then, a woman walked by, overhearing their conversation. Excuse me, officer. What's going on here? She asked, her voice laced with concern. She was a middle-aged white woman, and her presence momentarily caught Officer Mark off guard. Stay out of this, he snapped, but the woman stood her ground. I have a right to know why you're harassing this couple, she insisted. They haven't done anything wrong. Officer Mark turned back to Maya and James, his anger simmering beneath the surface. You two are lucky I'm in a good mood today, he growled, his voice low and menacing. But mark my words, you won't always get away with this. Maya felt a surge of frustration. This isn't right, she said, her voice shaking slightly. You're abusing your power. At that moment, a familiar figure appeared in the distance. It was Sarah, their lawyer, walking briskly toward them. She had just finished a meeting nearby and sensed something was off when she saw the crowd gathered around Officer Mark and her clients. Officer Mark, what's going on? Sarah called out, her tone firm but calm. The authoritative way she carried herself immediately shifted the atmosphere. Maya and James looked at each other, relief flooding their expressions. Sarah, they exclaimed in unison, and a sense of hope washed over them. As Sarah approached, Officer Mark's expression changed. He seemed to shrink back slightly, the tension in his shoulders easing as he realized who she was. You don't need to get involved, he said, his bravado wavering. But Sarah wasn't deterred. Actually, I do need to get involved. What's the problem here? She stepped between the officer and the couple, her presence commanding respect. Just some kids who think they can break the law, Officer Mark replied, his voice defensive, but the lie hung in the air, thin and transparent. Kids? Sarah echoed incredulously. These are my clients. They haven't done anything wrong. This is clearly harassment. She turned to Maya and James, concern etched on her face. Are you two okay? Yes, we're fine, but he's trying to intimidate us for no reason, Maya said, her voice stronger now that Sarah was there. Officer Mark opened his mouth to protest, but Sarah cut him off. You need to step back and assess the situation. You're making a mistake, Officer Mark. This is not how you treat people. The crowd had grown larger, and the eyes of the onlookers now focused on Officer Mark, as murmurs of disbelief spread among them. Feeling the pressure, Officer Mark took a step back, clearly rattled. I was just doing my job, he insisted, but the authority in his voice was fading. No, you were acting on prejudice, Sarah replied, her voice firm. And that is unacceptable. Maya and James stood taller, feeling empowered by Sarah's presence. They were no longer alone in facing this unjust situation. Officer Mark shifted uncomfortably, realizing the tide was turning against him. He glanced around at the witnesses and took a deep breath, frustration evident on his face. Fine, I'm done here, he said, backing away. But don't think this is over. Maya felt a rush of relief wash over her as Officer Mark walked away. She turned to Sarah, gratitude shining in her eyes. Thank you for being here. We couldn't have handled that without you. Of course, Sarah replied, her tone softening. You both did well. Remember, you have the right to stand up for yourselves. As the crowd began to disperse, Maya and James exchanged glances, the weight of the encounter beginning to lift. They had faced an unjust situation, but together, they had triumphed. It was a reminder of their strength and the importance of standing up against prejudice, no matter the circumstances. With newfound determination, they walked away from the cafe, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, knowing they were not alone in their fight for justice. Tension and conflict. Maya and James stood facing Officer Mark, the tension in the air thick enough to cut with a knife. What had started as a joyful day had turned into a confrontation, and the couple felt the weight of the moment pressing down on them. James squeezed Maya's hand, silently reassuring her that they would get through this together. "Listen," Officer Mark said, his tone condescending. "I don't care about your excuses. You fit the description of some troublemakers in the area, and I need to verify who you are. So, hand over your IDs." Maya's heart raced, not from fear, but from a mixture of anger and disbelief. "We haven't done anything wrong," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "You can't just stop us because we're black and assume we're criminals." James stepped forward, his voice rising slightly. "This is harassment. We have rights, and we're not going to be intimidated by you." Officer Mark's face turned red, his jaw tightening as he glared at them. "You think you know the law? You think just because you have a lawyer, you can do whatever you want? I'll show you how things work around here." Maya felt a knot form in her stomach. She knew they had done nothing wrong, yet here they were, standing in front of a man who held power over them simply because of his badge. The surrounding crowd began to gather closer, whispering among themselves, and she could feel the weight of their gazes. "Do you really want to escalate this?" Officer Mark continued, taking a step closer to Maya. "I can make your day a lot worse if you don't cooperate." In that moment, Maya realized the gravity of the situation. She took a deep breath, her mind racing. "We're not going to give you our IDs unless you have a legitimate reason to ask for them," she said firmly. "You can't treat us like this." James stood resolutely beside her, his expression unyielding. "You can't just assume we're guilty because of the color of our skin. We deserve to be treated with respect." Officer Mark seemed to falter for a moment, his authority challenged by their defiance. The tension in the air became electric, and the crowd began to murmur, some showing support for Maya and James while others looked on with uncertainty. "Back off. You're making a scene," Officer Mark shouted, clearly frustrated. He glanced around, as if seeking validation from the onlookers. "I'm just doing my job. You have no idea what it's like to deal with people like you." Maya felt the anger boiling inside her. "People like us? What does that even mean? This isn't about who we are. It's about the fact that you are abusing your power." Just then, the woman who had initially questioned Officer Mark stepped forward again. "Excuse me, officer," she said firmly. "You are crossing a line. These two are just enjoying their day, and you have no right to treat them this way." Officer Mark turned his attention to her, irritation flashing in his eyes. "Stay out of this. This is none of your business," he snapped. "It is my business when I see someone being mistreated for no reason," the woman retorted, her voice unwavering. "You are supposed to protect and serve, not harass innocent people." The crowd began to murmur in agreement, emboldened by her words. Maya and James exchanged glances, feeling a surge of support from the people around them. They were not alone in this fight. "You don't know what you're talking about," Officer Mark grumbled, trying to regain control of the situation. "You have no idea what I deal with on a daily basis." Maya took a step forward, her heart pounding. "And you have no idea what it's like to be judged based on the color of your skin. We're not criminals, and you have no right to treat us like we are." With Sarah now standing by their side, the dynamic shifted further. Sarah spoke up, her voice firm yet calm. "Officer Mark, I suggest you reassess the situation. These two are my clients, and you're harassing them without cause. This behavior is unacceptable. Who do you think you are?" Officer Mark spat, frustration evident in his voice. "You're just a lawyer. This is police business." "Exactly," Sarah replied, her confidence unwavering. "And I'm here to ensure that my clients are treated fairly and justly. What you're doing is a clear violation of their rights." The crowd around them grew larger, and Maya could feel the energy shift. People were starting to take notice, and they weren't going to let Officer Mark get away with his behavior. "Back off, everyone," Officer Mark shouted, but his voice was losing its authority. He glanced around, seeing the expressions of support from Maya and James. This is not a public spectacle. Maya felt a wave of strength wash over her as she realized they had allies. "We're not going anywhere," she said defiantly. "We deserve to be treated with respect, just like anyone else." Officer Mark shifted uncomfortably, his bravado faltering as he glanced at the growing crowd. The whispers turned into louder conversations, and he was losing control. "I was just doing my job," he muttered, but the confidence in his voice had vanished. Just then, a police siren echoed in the distance, and the tension in the air thickened. James shot a glance at Maya, both of them aware of the potential escalation. "We're not afraid of you," he said, his voice steady. "We'll stand up for our rights no matter what." As Officer Mark took a step back, the crowd began to respond with supportive murmurs and nods. Maya felt the adrenaline coursing through her veins as they stood united against the injustice they were facing. In that moment, Sarah stepped forward, confronting Officer Mark directly. "You need to think about your actions. This isn't just about you, it's about the trust and respect that the community expects from law enforcement." "Fine. I'm done here," Officer Mark said, visibly frustrated. "But don't think this is over. I'll be watching you both." Maya and James felt a mix of relief and frustration as Officer Mark walked away. They had stood their ground, but the encounter had shaken them. Sarah turned to them, concern etched on her face. "Are you both okay?" she asked gently. Maya nodded, but James's expression showed a flicker of anger. "We shouldn't have to deal with this. This shouldn't be how things are." "You're right," Sarah said, her tone serious. "This isn't just about today. It's about the systemic issues we need to fight against. But what you did today was brave." Maya took a deep breath, trying to shake off the lingering tension. "I just want to enjoy my life without fear of being treated like a criminal." The crowd began to disperse, some people offering supportive smiles and nods. It was a small victory, but it felt significant. Maya and James knew they had made a stand together, and that was something they would always cherish. As they walked away from the cafe, hand in hand, they couldn't shake the feeling of unease that lingered. The incident had opened their eyes to the realities they often faced, and while they felt empowered, they also understood that the road ahead would require continuous effort and resilience. This was just one moment in a long journey, and they were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, united in their fight for dignity and respect. The twist. Just as Officer Mark was about to escalate the situation further, the sound of hurried footsteps approached from behind. Maya turned slightly, her heart racing with anticipation. Sarah, their lawyer, was finally here. Her presence alone could shift the power dynamic, and Maya felt a wave of relief wash over her. "Officer Mark, what's going on?" Sarah called out, her voice steady and commanding. She had a no-nonsense demeanor that instantly drew attention. The crowd hushed, sensing the seriousness of her arrival. Maya could see Officer Mark's expression shift from aggressive to defensive as he recognized Sarah. "This doesn't concern you, Sarah," he replied, his tone gruff, but there was an edge of uncertainty in his voice. "Actually, it does," Sarah said, stepping forward confidently. "These are my clients, and I need to know why you're harassing them." James looked at Maya, his eyes reflecting hope. Maybe Sarah's arrival would finally put an end to this injustice. Officer Mark crossed his arms, trying to maintain an air of authority. "They fit the description of some troublemakers we've been dealing with. I'm just doing my job." Maya felt the anger bubbling up again. "We haven't done anything wrong," she insisted, her voice stronger now. "You're abusing your power just because we're a black couple in this neighborhood. Calm down, both of you." Officer Mark snapped, attempting to regain control. This isn't a public spectacle. But the crowd had grown larger, and their murmurs of support for Maya and James filled the air. They weren't just bystanders anymore. They were witnesses to an injustice that was unfolding before them. "Officer Mark," Sarah said, her tone unwavering, "you know that harassing innocent people based on their race is unacceptable. This is a clear case of racial profiling." James felt a surge of pride as he listened to Sarah speak. She was not backing down. The crowd shifted, many nodding in agreement with her words, clearly sensing the injustice of the situation. "What do you know about these people?" Officer Mark shot back, his frustration evident. "They could be anyone." "They are not anyone. They are my clients," Sarah countered firmly. "And they deserve to be treated with respect, just like any other citizen. This behavior will not be tolerated." Maya and James stood taller, encouraged by Sarah's words. Officer Mark was starting to look uncomfortable, his bravado slipping as he faced the undeniable truth of his actions. "Listen," Officer Mark said, his voice wavering. "I didn't mean to escalate things. I was just trying to keep the area safe." "But at what cost?" Sarah pressed. You can't just assume someone is a criminal because of their appearance. That's not how law enforcement should work. At that moment, Officer Mark seemed to realize the weight of the situation. He took a step back, his shoulders slumping slightly. "I'm just doing my job," he repeated, but the conviction in his voice was fading. "Your job should involve protecting the community, not harassing it," Sarah replied. "And I suggest you reconsider your actions before this goes any further." As the tension hung in the air, Officer Mark glanced around at the crowd. The onlookers were watching him closely, their expressions a mix of concern and disapproval. He was losing control and he knew it. "Fine," he said reluctantly, throwing his hands up in defeat. "I'm done here." He turned and walked away, frustration evident in his stride. The crowd erupted into murmurs of disbelief, followed by quiet applause and supportive cheers for Maya and James. "Thank you," a bystander called out, and others echoed the sentiment, feeling the energy of the moment. Maya and James exchanged relieved glances, the tension that had built up in their bodies beginning to dissipate. "Are you both okay?" Sarah asked, her tone softening as she turned to them. "Yes, thanks to you," Maya replied, her voice filled with gratitude. "I can't believe that just happened." James nodded, his expression still serious. "It's just so frustrating that we had to go through this at all. We were just out enjoying our day." Sarah placed a reassuring hand on Maya's shoulder. "You both handled that incredibly well. It takes a lot of courage to stand up to authority like that, especially when it feels like the world is against you." Maya took a deep breath, the adrenaline still coursing through her veins. "I just want to enjoy my life without fear. We shouldn't have to worry about being treated like this." "I know," Sarah said, her voice earnest. "And that's why it's so important to speak out. Today was just one instance, but it highlights a much larger problem. We need to keep fighting against this kind of injustice." As the crowd began to disperse, Maya felt a sense of empowerment. They had faced a challenge and emerged stronger. The incident had opened her eyes to the reality of racial prejudice, but it also showed her the importance of standing up for what was right. "Thank you again for coming when you did," James said, looking at Sarah with appreciation. "You really made a difference." "Of course," she replied with a smile. "I'm always here for you too. And remember, you have a voice and it matters." With that, Maya and James began to walk away from the scene, hand in hand. They felt the warmth of the sun on their skin, a reminder that despite the challenges they faced, they would always support each other. As they walked, they talked about the experience and how it had affected them. It was a turning point, a moment that would stay with them forever. They were ready to take on the world, determined to make a difference, not just for themselves, but for everyone who had faced similar injustices. The encounter had shown them that they were not alone. Together, they could advocate for change and work toward a future where everyone was treated with dignity and respect. And as they headed home, they knew that their fight was just beginning, but they felt empowered to continue their journey, united in their love and commitment to making the world a better place. Resolution and moral lesson. As the crowd began to disperse, Maya and James felt an overwhelming sense of relief wash over them. The confrontation with Officer Mark had been intense, but Sarah's timely intervention had changed the course of the moment. They stood side by side, their hearts racing but filled with a renewed sense of strength. "Are you both okay?" Sarah asked, concern etched across her face. "Yes, we're fine now," Maya replied, her voice still shaky but stronger than before. "I can't believe that just happened." James nodded, still processing the adrenaline that surged through him. "It's frustrating to think that we were just enjoying our day and got pulled into something like that." Sarah placed a comforting hand on Maya's shoulder. "You both handled yourselves incredibly well. It takes courage to stand up to authority, especially when it feels like the odds are against you." Maya glanced at James, feeling a mix of gratitude and determination. "I never thought we'd have to deal with something like this. It's just so unfair." James chimed in. "It's a reminder of how important it is to speak out against injustice. We can't let this slide. We have to make our voices heard." Sarah smiled, proud of their resolve. "Exactly. What happened today is a reflection of larger issues within society. It's about systemic racism and how we need to challenge it at every level. Every time someone stands up, It brings us one step closer to real change. Maya felt a spark of hope ignite within her. What can we do to help? We can't just walk away and forget about this. I suggest getting involved with local advocacy groups, Sarah replied. Share your story, raise awareness, and connect with others who have had similar experiences. Your voices matter, and they can inspire others to join the fight for justice. James nodded vigorously. I want to do that. I don't want anyone else to feel the way we felt today. As they talked, the crowd began to thin out, but some individuals lingered, sharing their own experiences and expressing solidarity. A young woman approached them, her expression empathetic. I saw what happened. Thank you for standing up for yourselves. It's inspiring. Thank you, Maya said, her heart warming at the support. It means a lot to hear that. I've experienced similar situations, and it can be tough, the woman continued. But we have to keep speaking out. Every voice counts. James added, we're planning to get more involved. It's important to raise awareness about these issues. As they chatted with onlookers, they felt the weight of the day begin to lift. The shared stories, the collective resolve, and the sense of community made them feel less isolated. They were part of something bigger, a movement toward change. Eventually, the conversation turned to their future plans. We should keep each other updated on any events or meetings we can attend, Maya suggested. We can work together to make a difference. I'd love that, the woman replied. It's always better to have a support system. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the street, Maya and James took a moment to breathe in the atmosphere around them. Despite the tension and conflict of the day, they felt a renewed sense of purpose. Before they parted ways with the small group, Sarah took a step forward. I want to commend all of you for being here today. It's important to show up for one another, to support each other in times of need. We must continue to advocate for change and hold those in power accountable. Maya and James nodded in agreement, their hearts swelling with determination. Thank you for your support, Maya said, looking around at the faces of those who had gathered. It really makes a difference to know we're not alone in this. As they walked away from the cafe, hand in hand, they couldn't shake the feeling of empowerment that had taken root within them. The encounter had opened their eyes to the realities of racial prejudice, but it also showed them the importance of standing up for what was right. The events of the day served as a powerful reminder of the importance of standing up for oneself and others. It was a lesson about courage, community, and the fight against injustice. Maya and James understood that their voices mattered and that by speaking out, they could help create a ripple effect of change. In a world that often tried to silence marginalized voices, they knew that they could not remain silent. Their experiences would fuel their passion to advocate for equality and justice. As they reached their apartment, James turned to Maya, a determined look on his face. Let's start a blog or a social media page to share our experiences. We can raise awareness and connect with others who want to make a difference. I love that idea, Maya exclaimed, feeling a surge of excitement. We can share our journey and encourage others to join us in the fight against racism. They spent the evening brainstorming ideas, discussing ways to engage their community, and sharing their story. They knew it wouldn't be easy, but they were committed to making a change. As they finalized their plans, Maya turned to James. I'm so grateful to have you by my side. Together, we can make a difference. Always, he replied, pulling her in for a warm embrace. We'll fight this battle together. As they prepared to share their story with the world, they felt a sense of purpose. They were ready to take on whatever challenges lay ahead, united in their love and commitment to creating a better future. If you found this story inspiring, please like and share this video. Let's raise awareness about the importance of standing up against injustice and supporting one another in the fight for equality. Remember, every voice counts, and together we can make a difference. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more stories that inspire change, and leave a comment below to share your thoughts about this story. We want to hear from you. What did you think? Have you ever experienced a situation like this? Your experiences matter, and together, we can continue this important conversation. Thank you for watching.